Good morning from the ministries of Sandy Springs and John Wesley United Methodist Churches. It's good to be with you again on this Sunday morning. Uh, I remind all of you that there are a lot of people struggling again with the world in which we live in, the contentiousness of this election, and then so many people who have suffered because of COVID, either through unemployment, simply a time of being lonely, or many people who've become sick. And of course, we've all lost friends. And we need to be very sensitive and very aware that people are struggling in this world today and they need some positive news. And so it's good to be with you again. Now, today we're going to talk about Mark. Once again, I go back to Mark. We talked about Mark last week, and this is also part of the beginning. Now, one of the things about the beginning of a book, the beginning of a sermon, it's very important in the beginning to say what the sermon is about, or to say what the book is about. And this story is telling us what Mark is trying to tell us about Jesus. And unlike the other Gospels, Mark begins with this story about Jesus going to the synagogue and there confronting a demon who has taken possession of a man. And I think it's a wonderful story, and it's just good to be able to preach in the name of Jesus. From Mark 1:21 through 28 come these words. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at Jesus' teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority. Now, that's one of the important words, and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, What have you to do with me, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? Now, this is the demon speaking, not the man. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked the demon, saying, Be silent and come out of this man. And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of the man. And the people were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, What is this, a new teaching? With authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. And at once Jesus' fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So Mark begins his sermon with these simple concepts. Jesus goes to a synagogue in Capernaum, and there he meets a man who has been possessed by a spirit. And as Jesus comes to the man, the evil, unclean spirit cries out, What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? And of course, we know that Jesus, with authority, commands that the unclean spirit, the demon, leave, and that's what happens. The man is now okay. He has been cured of his demon. He has been delivered of his demon. So my first words this morning is that we are going to talk about demons. Not just the demons that we read about of 2,000 years ago, but more the reality of the world in which we live in, and the demons that we encounter in our days, in ourselves, even in our churches. So first, what are demons? What are demons? Some of the ancients, they many beliefs, but some of the ancients believed that there were two kinds of demons. They were the guardians who protected property, sort of like what we see today in gargoyles that we see around houses. And the second one, which is more relating to the story of today, were these demons that wandered about looking to possess people. Now, the interesting thing about the ancients, they believed, didn't necessarily think that the demons were evil, and they believed that with authority, the demons could be controlled, could be told what to do. Interesting, too, how much people have taken advantage of these demons. Church leaders discovered hundreds of years ago that demons could, if they really played up the demon story, they could really control more of the church people. They could keep them in line. In the same way, Hollywood has profited from demons. The worse they make demons, the more money they make from their demons. So what are demons? Demons are the Satan's helpers. They are his troops, his soldiers. And so the first thing I want you to remember is this: the real enemy is not the demon. The real enemy is the force behind the demon, the Satan. Now, let's get a little deeper. What are demons? In demons, back in Jesus' day, it was a term in which people used to explain things that they just couldn't understand, sort of like we do dark matter today or dark energy. Do we know it's dark? No, we don't. Do we know it's matter or energy? We don't have any clue. It occupies 75% of the universe, and we don't have a clue of what it is. So we call it dark matter. We call it dark energy. In the same way, the people in Jesus' time called these things that possess people, call them demons. Now, this man, what did he suffer from? Was it something physical like epilepsy? Was it something psychological? Was it something social that he suffered? Was it something like we see today people possessed by drugs? And so the key word here I think we need to remember is this word possession. Demons possess, demons control. And there's a lot more demons in our world than we recognize. I'm just going to give you an example. Do you know what we call a person that collects newspapers and magazines? A person who is addicted to the collection of newspapers and magazines, we call them hoarders. Now, do you know what we call a person that collects shoes or collects clothes? We call them well-dressed. And by the same token, do you know what we call people that are possessed that collect money? We call them successful. But it's the same thing, isn't it, church? Demons possess us. And if I were to list the top 5 demons in this country today, I'd have to say, and you make your own list, I'd have to say one of our demons as a country is hatred. Another is anger. Another is fear. Another is greed. And another, of course, is ignorance. Matter of fact, we have manuals trying to explain what ancients would call demons. Today, there's the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and people like Victoria and Lou in their careers use these to diagnose people. But we know it goes a lot deeper than that. We refer to people who are possessed as trouble, as sometimes it's mad. Sometimes we're very nice about it and we say, well, he's just not right. But my mom had a good word for it. My mom called them sick. And what she meant by that was that these were people who were suffering from some kind of situation that possessed them. In church, honestly, I much prefer her version of who these people are. Then to think of people that carry pitchforks and have tails and long horns. So how do we deal with demons? How do we deal with demons? And the first thing I would say is, if we're going to have to deal with demons, the first thing we need to know is we need to know our own demons, don't we, church? It's interesting about Jesus. After the baptism, he was led into the wilderness to be tempted by the big guy, Satan himself. And it's interesting that that happened at the very beginning of his career. And what it's trying to tell us is that Jesus, before he could go out and minister to others, he had to come to terms with his own issues, with his own, if you will, demons. But of course, church, we live in a world that really doesn't want to know about demons, and they certainly don't want to admit that they have any demons. And so, what we normally do is we live in a world that instead of acknowledging and coming to recognize their own demons, we live in a world that has become very good at sharing demons. What happened at the Capitol? What happened when people looted and burned? They shared their demons. People brought their demons and shared them. And we see the disastrous results of what demons can do. In church, there are demons that sometimes come even to churches. I had one church that there was an issue there that if they had simply talked it out in a calm way, they would have resolved it easily. But instead, about a dozen people came and they brought their demons and they just turned them loose. In church, it was disastrous what happened. Some churches, some families left within 2 weeks. Other families left even as far as a year or 2 or 4 years later because of what they had experienced in that church meeting. Some people stopped giving. Some people stopped talking to one another. Some people began lying about one another. And all I can say is that was a great day for Satan when those demons were turned loose. Do you know your demons? So I want you to ask, go ahead and think about who your demons are. And if you're not sure, ask your friends. They'll tell you. So I'm going to tell you my own demons. One of my big demons is worry. Another of my demons is I tend to eat late at night. I don't know what that demon has in mind, but I do, and that I hate that about myself. It's a possession. Another of my big demons is this thing called impatient. And another, not as often as it used to show up, another of my demons is this thing called anger. Now, I've given you 4. Now, Lou says I have another demon, and that is that sometimes I think I'm smart. And Lou's demons, one of her demons is she thinks she has to keep me humble. So what are your demons? The second thing that Jesus did in this story is that he separated the demon from the man. If you look at the details of the story, that's exactly what happens. And listen, church, he rebuked the demon, not the man. And I think Mark is trying to tell us something. That if we're going to be effective in this world in dealing with the demons, especially demons in other people, we need to separate those demons from the person in which those demons live in. Do you know the difference? So I tell you the story of a friend of mine, Jack. He and some friends were working at a place, and they were staying at this particular place. And one night, there's a big noise, and they look outside, and coming up to to where they lived was this group of people. And again, my friend and his friends were there. And as they saw this other group came up, and they could tell this other group, it was angry. They were just mad. They were yelling and shouting, and they had bets. And my friend said immediately, he and his friends, they took a defensive position. They were ready to fight it out. They had no idea what was going on. But it's interesting. Then my friend did something that I think was terribly smart. He said, wait, just a minute. He said, before we go any further in this, before we fight, let's do something. Uh, let one of your people come and talk to me. Just me, the two of us. We just gonna have a conversation about what's going on here. And fortunately, the other side agreed, and they sent someone. And so my friend Jack and this person from the other side, they started to talk, and my friend said, "Why are you doing this?" And the other fellow explained, and lo and behold, it was a case of mistaken identity. The second group had thought that this group where my friend was had done something which they had not. What my friend was able to do was separate the demon from the people there. Do we do that? I think one of the problems in this country today, if you look at our leaders in this country, if you look at the United Methodist Church, our problem is that we are not separating anything. We are like packs of angry wolves that are tearing at each other's throats. And as a result, we are all suffering because our leaders are, in a way, possessed by their own demons. So finally, the part that I struggle with. Many people read this story and they look at it as a wow story. In other words, wow, Jesus could do that. He could wave the magic wand and make the demon go away. And that's one way of looking at the gospel. It's not the way I look at it. Jesus, matter of fact, in Luke 9, reprimands the disciples because they were not able to cast out the demon that was possessing a young boy. And I think if you look in the Gospels, Mark is not just telling us a story for our information. Mark is trying to tell us that we too can exert control over our own demons, and we too can help people fight their demons. So what can we do? And the first thing I'll say is, unfortunately, that some people simply love their demons, don't they, church? Some people never decline an opportunity to join the craziness. Some people are so possessed, and they like it that way, that eventually they become self-destructive. The second thing I think, and I've already talked about this, is the fact that we need, if we're going to exert control, if we're going to exert authority over our demons, we better know our demons, and we better be able to separate the demon from the person, including ourselves. But the third thing that I think that we have to learn from this is what Timothy, 2 Timothy says. He says this, and this is where I understand the term authority. 2 Timothy says this: God did not give us a spirit of fear, but he gave us a spirit of power and love and self-control. Our best weapon in fighting the demonic in this country today, and fighting the demonic in ourselves, is that of a God-given sound mind. So I'm going to close with one of my own stories. One of the churches I had loved hard preaching. Now, some of you know what hard preaching is. That's the kind of preaching that sort of takes you high off, just extremely direct, sometimes angry. And I was at a church in which some people really liked the hard preaching, and of course, I soon uh, I soon picked up on that, and so I started to preach hard. And when I did, they'd meet me at the close of the service. They'd meet me at the door and say, "Preacher, you did a great job. You stepped all over us." In other words, they were feeding my demon, my anger demon. And of course, when they did that, and demons will eat, take any food they can. My demons grew, and I became even more direct, and I became even more angry. And of course, I received even more compliments about how great my preaching was. And of course, all of that went on to feed the demons in me. Well, church, it just escalated. It got to the point that I thought to myself, "Si, you really know how to take people's hide off. You really have gotten good at this." And of course, I was just feeding that demon in me. I was just feeding him every Sunday. I'd give him a new dose of food, making him bigger. And in church one day, I thought I'd done particularly well in that church. I mean, I just let them have it. I was just so direct. I told them everything that they had done wrong. I told them every which way in which they had failed, and I could tell some of them were just loving that. And I thought I'd done a great job that Sunday, church. And so at the close of the service, I'm standing there at the door of the church, and people are coming through. And some of these people that I'm talking about came through and said, "Si, you did a wonderful job. You just stepped all over me today." And others were saying, "That was a great preaching, Si. That was just exactly what we need." Just feeding my demon. And then comes this sweet lady, and she extends her hand, and I take her hand, and she looks at me, and she smiles at me, and she says, "Si, do you feel better now?" With that sweet smile and that clear mind, she had cast out my demon. And as far as I know, I've never preached angry again. That demon is out the door, and I'm going to keep him there. How about you? And so I'm going to close with a little bit of a warning tonight, this morning. First Peter says this: stay in control. Stay awake. The Satan is stalking you. He is like a lion looking for someone to devour. Church, choose Jesus. Be of sound mind. Be part of the solution. We have enough demons around, and we as a church all said, Amen.